So my name is Rohit. I'm very passionate about techniques. I work at Synergy, and the topic for today is OAuth. Okay. Let me have a raise of hands. By seeing that how many of you guys actually know about OAuth. Okay. So very less people. How many of you guys have seen this button on websites saying login using Facebook? Okay. That's one example of OAuth. But today we're going to actually go into, we're going to go to the basics of OAuth. We're going to understand what OAuth is really about, why it came into picture. We're going to see a basic end user flow. Then we'll be actually diving into the specs of OAuth. We'll be doing a deep dive. And if we get a time, we'll look at a history of OpenID, okay, and then we'll look at the next step in OpenID. At the same time, we're going to do some examples with Facebook and Google. We're going to do some live examples where we will try to access some of the APIs and get some resources out of Facebook and Google. So why do you care about OAuth? So if you care about any of these sites, okay, you should typically care about OAuth. So Facebook is very popular these days because people are even looking at Facebook, to see how we can launch businesses on Facebook. Every business has a site on Facebook, okay, to evangelize their own businesses, and they want people to follow up, on Facebook. So the world's changing. And typically, the way it works is this way: you're an end user over here. You're going to use the browser, and you'll be accessing various websites. Some of these websites are Facebook, LinkedIn, Foursquare, Twitter. Anybody not heard of any of these names? You have, right? So typically we know how to use it using the browsers. You all use that. And for some of the websites, you have this button called as login with Facebook or login with Twitter, typically to avoid the cycle of filling in the registration form or signing up and things like that. So this is the typical reason why people are thinking about OAuth. So when you talk about somebody launching a new site, they want to avoid the cycle of filling a registration form. So let's go through a typical sign-up process. Let's say we are talking about a new website called as printfast.com. The idea is to access your photographs and print them, and then get them delivered at your home. Now, if you see there's a sign-up button on the website, you click on that. First click. Then there's a form coming up. First name, last name, username, what kind of password, CAPTCHA. Where you try to enter those weird-looking text, and sometimes you end up not getting it correct, so you do it again. You click submit. It sends your email. So now we have got 2 clicks. Sends your email. You access the email. You click on an email link. Activation. 3 clicks. Right? So this is a lot of work. And the same information is available on various websites already. So the idea is, if I'm a Facebook user, why cannot I leverage the fact? So this is why people actually look at OAuth typically, but OAuth is much more than that. So we use websites using the browser. All these websites also provide access via APIs. How many of you guys know about any API over here? Anybody? Can you name it? No, but Twitter API, right? So
API provides access to that particular program. So I am using the API of Twitter, then I can build my app on Twitter.
Absolutely correct. So there are many APIs. Anything you want to add?
Inti.com.
Huh?
Inti.com.
Inti.com, yeah. So there are a number of them. Foursquare, Facebook, name it. There are a number of APIs. There are also APIs for searching, or APIs for searching places. For example, Google Places is a nice API to search for local search, what restaurants are available and things like that. So there are many APIs which are coming up. So what happens is people end up creating some mashups. These mashups are either using a couple of APIs. For example, I want to show what people are tweeting in what region. Simple stupid mashup where on a map I'm showing what people are tweeting over where. So these mashups could be some programs which run on either the web, either the mobile, or maybe they could be desktop, and they need to access the information in all these services. The problem is identity. you are having different identities with different people, with different things. And that's why it's very important to understand the concept about OAuth, understand the concept about security, and we'll be looking at that. Talking about APIs. This is a directory for APIs. It's called as programmerweb.com. If you actually go over here, you will see there are around 7,000 plus APIs listed. So tomorrow, if you want to build some, Android client or iOS client or do some cool program, you don't have to write the server side yourself. You can just consume some of these, web services and write your own stuff. And look at the number. This number is actually quite staggering. Even if you divide this number by 1/3, that would be the number of companies who are exposing the APIs, and that's kind of huge amount of companies. Out of these, there are 390 APIs which are already supporting OAuth, and that's why we need to learn about OAuth. Okay. Now, obviously, we don't know much about OAuth at present, but I'm just giving you motivation to understand why OAuth is really catching up. So let's just go back to the bare minimum. Security. So we all know security is two things: authentication, finding what the user is, who the user is. Second thing is authorization. What kind of access do you have? Think about anything. Think about your access card to the company. There's two parts: a plastic card, which has your 4-row employee number, that can be your ID, authentication, and authorization. Your actually access cards working in a conference room, not working in a conference room is your access to those things. So simple things: authentication and authorization. Any questions so far? Next, let's just see OAuth in a nutshell. Very, very simple example, and I'm a great fan of using live examples. You go to a restaurant, you have some food, have a nice time, and you ask for a bill. And the waiter comes and says, "Hey, give me your ATM card and your PIN number." Would you give that? Any reason why? He can take your money, but more important, he can take all of your money. And that's the whole problem. Because if he gets the ATM card and PIN for the bank, he is me. So he gets, it's a clone. He has my ID now. So instead, he comes to me and says, "Okay, I need your credit card to swipe." He goes and swipes it. He brings a slip. The slip has very important information on it. How much amount are you authorizing, that person to take out from the bank? So now you're giving a much more narrower authorization. That only 1,000 bucks are allowed to be taken out for these things, and it requires a signature. So you're good to go. There's another example. So let's say you have a very nice fancy car and you go to a restaurant and you give it for valet parking, and you're going to be in a restaurant for next 2 hours. You don't know if that person is going to take your car for a joyride and go anywhere. So for people who have very, very expensive cars, they come with two kind of keys. One is a key for owner, and one is a key for the valet person. So that key stops the car if it goes beyond 500 meters. So you can't take it out. And that's a good security. This is what we call as typically OAuth, which is giving a limited access to somebody else to do work on my behalf. And that's the simple definition of OAuth. Let's see a practical example, and then we'll see if people have any questions around it. So without OAuth, you go to a website called as printfast.com. It says print photos and deliver them home. And it asks you, where are your photographs? You say, my photographs are in Picasa. And it asks you, give me a Picasa login and my password. And look at the line below. We swear, we will not leak your Picasa username and password. And that's crazy. If he gets your username and password, he can do whatever he wants with you. It's your identity basically. Nothing can be stopped. And that's a bad example. Even if you get access to the pictures to print, that's not really good. So let's just start over again with OAuth this time. So look at this. Right now, I'm in a browser. I'm looking at printfast.com. I know that I'm on a particular website. And I click on Picasa. Now, I've been taken to Picasa.com. And here, I don't have any issues entering my username and password because I trust Picasa. It's Picasa itself asking me for that. Let's say if I'm already logged in, I'll get a page like this. It's simply asking me a couple of permissions that, okay, do you want to grant permission to your photographs? And you can say, grant access or deny access. Now this is a very simple scenario. Here also I'm giving permissions to my entire account, okay? But it could be more granular. So printfast can ask me that I only require permissions to your folders or your pictures, not to your profile, things like that. So I say grant access. I come back over here, okay? And somehow magically, now printfast has the authority to actually go behind the scenes and fetch up my pictures and show it over here. And then I click whichever pictures I want and print them. And that's the OAuth flow. So I'll just take a pause over here and let you guys ask questions on this.
Will there be any expiration for the OAuth?
Yes, there is an expiration. It is obviously required to expire things. So the spec says you have to have expiry. So we're talking about OAuth specs. But some websites, they don't do it. For example, Twitter, when it gives you access, it doesn't, it's forever. Unless the user himself takes the permission out.
All of this, it is the same with the Facebook. When you want to place a game or access some application, they ask you to, this page is requesting you, getting information of your. So is this the same thing?
That's what OAuth really is. Facebook is using OAuth. So basically, let's say you are going for a horoscope site, or app, a horoscope app. You click on that, your friend sends a request to you on Facebook. You click on that, it takes you to a page. This application is asking you access to your name and your date of birth. And it's asking you permission to post on your behalf on your wall. So it's asking you for precisely 3 permissions. You're saying granted. Now that application can make a call using whatever grant you provided, get your name and get your date of birth, calculate the horoscope, and then push it on your wall. That's what these applications do.
So according to you, is it secure according to you?
This is secure because you are granting the permission. Okay. And is there anywhere you are giving the username password? No, right? And in fact, if you don't know this, you can go to the Facebook settings page and you can say, I no longer want to give permission to this application, delete the application or revoke the permission. So henceforth, he cannot do these things. So that's it. That's secure. Yes?
Probably it's still early question.
Sure.
We get security and all, right? A couple of months ago, we saw that LinkedIn username and password were compromised.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what security would not help you at such a case, right? Because we'll ask the original user IDs. Is there a second level of security that OAuth talks about?
No, not really. OAuth is only about one thing. That's about delegating access on behalf of the user. How the identity provider, identifies the user is beyond the scope. So that's what the spec says. Okay, so if you're using username password, that's beyond scope of OAuth. If you're using some PIN and one-time generation password which comes to your cell phone, that's beyond the scope of OAuth. OAuth will only talk about one thing: delegating access. Yes.
How do we control the access to functions? Suppose I have granted access to particular application, but I don't know how much access they have to my account.
So that's what, once they ask the access. So,
Repeat the question.
yeah, sorry. So the question is asking is if some application asks the permissions, how much permission do they have? So that's what I'm saying precisely. Once you go to the application and you say that okay, install or log in or whatever you say over there, start the application, it will take you. So this application will first of all ping Facebook, for example, in this case, and say, hey, I want permission to these 3 things. Then when you go to Facebook, Facebook will tell you that this application requires permission to these 3 things. So you are sure about it. Okay. So if there's no permission to update your friend list or fetch your friend list, this application would not be able to fetch it. So you know that it's only your name, your date of birth, and your ability to post on your behalf on the wall is the only permission the app has. It's like that's the only power of attorney you are given to that particular person. And
OAuth is like a coordinator between a couple of entities. In this case, you have a link, so you want to publish publish something on Facebook. So that whole activity, when you click on that, it goes to OAuth. OAuth then actually does the Facebook redirection and all that coordination.
Yes.
It's like a mediator between.
Yes, so basically you have, yeah, it is a mediator, but think about this. What is a protocol which Facebook implements? So it's not an entity per se. There are 3-4 entities in this case. So if you implement OAuth, you have to implement these 3-4 entities, okay? So you'll have to implement something like having this ability to redirect a person to a page and letting him grant access. Then there are a couple of more steps. And the last step would be that, okay, if I know that this person is given authority by OAuth, then I should be able to expose those resources only. Yeah.
Actually, is OAuth will be generated to a particular host name or something like that? Because I have seen in some places that when I am accessing some URLs, I have seen that in the get the OAuth equal to. So does that mean that I can use that OAuth and from other?
No. So it's specific.
It's specific.
It's specific. So we'll see that. Hold that thought. Okay, we're going to see live examples to answer your question. Yeah, sorry, I'll get in habit. I think this. Okay. The question was if you have OAuth enabled for one client, okay, can the other client actually use the same?
The same OAuth, let's say from IP 101,
Pass this. Let's see if it's working. Just pass it along. We'll go.
Let's say for IP 101, I got the OAuth token, right? So can I use the same OAuth token for 102 IP also from 102?
So there is a thing that, okay, it's about the client. It's about what kind of application is trying to use it. It's not really about IP. IP would be too restrictive. But is it the same client who's trying to access it? Is the main thing. So we'll come to that, because I need to explain to you the definition of client in this case. Otherwise, whatever I say will just go over the top. But we are covering the topic. Okay. So let me move on. Let's get a little bit more technical. So let's just go about why do you require OAuth, and it's a very thought-provoking list why we should actually go over why OAuth is required. Let's say we have got a site, we have got Facebook, we got Twitter, we got Foursquare, and these sites they have the ability that if I provide base64 encoded username and password, they can give me access to my stuff. Let's go with these assumptions. Okay, that means if I'm writing a client or a web application somewhere, then my web application will also ask for my Facebook username and password, my Twitter username and password, my Foursquare username and password. So let's try to go to the scenario that, okay, for a while, let's say we are okay with that. Okay, although it's not fine, but for a while it's okay for that. Let's see what trouble we run into. And that will tell you why OAuth actually came into the picture. So first thing is trust. You don't trust, so it's difficult. Second thing is you are giving more access than you want to give. You're opening your entire account. There is no support for granular permission, that only this or only that. You cannot do that with the username and password because you are actually the user. If you get into this habit of saying that it's okay to put your username and password on a website, then you can have a lot of phishing attacks. So for example, ICICI.com sends you a request. You don't pay attention to that, or you get an email saying there's a form, put in your username and password, security gets breached. This point is very important. So let's say I am the person who writes the application. Okay, I put the application, and this gentleman actually shares the username and password with me, and I am doing work on his behalf. Now he decides to change his password. What happens to me? Everything is revoked because he actually changed the locks, and I cannot enter his house anymore. That's what it is. And second thing is, let's say this person. So we have like 4 of us are application developers. We've got different applications, and he shared password with every one of us. And he doesn't trust me anymore for some reason, and he wants to revoke access for me. He can't do that. These are the limitations which you have, and that's why OAuth actually came into the picture to solve those limitations. So what is really OAuth? OAuth is required for delegating access to a certain party, for a certain resource, for limited time, which can be selectively be revoked, is what is my definition of OAuth. Okay, so we'll just go a little bit ahead. Yeah.
Just go back to very layman addition to these points.
Yes.
How many passwords will I remember? That is probably one of the points that we need to add as well.
True.
And each application, each client, each browser has their own policies set for passwords. So it's not that a single password will work out, and you will keep forgetting your password.
Understood. So that is something which is very implicit, and sorry I missed that part. So what OAuth really enables is you to do is because see, I've been going through the specs again and again. I'm been thinking from the point of view of being a service provider like Facebook. So I'm missing the implicit over here. So obviously you don't need, like I said, printfast.com. I don't want the sign up page. I just want to say go to Facebook, authenticate, and all the time I just have to have one username and password, and that's why I'm safer. So and there's another issue with passwords which I missed. How many of you guys actually have the same username and password across 20 sites? Guilty as charged. All of us do that because we can't remember more than that. And remember, so if I launch a website and I ask you to come over, and I have access to username and password because I launched it, and I'm a malicious developer, I have access to your other accounts as well. So that's another issue with passwords. Very good point over there. So let's go over understanding what roles over here. Resource owner, person who owns the resources, like a Picasa user. Okay. Resource server, Picasa hosting, actually. Client, a mashup. Okay. Some application, let's say on the mobile phone also. You take a picture, you want to upload a picture on Picasa. That's a client. That is what the application is. Somebody who does work on your behalf is a client. Authorization server, in this case it will be Google Auth server because Picasa is part of the Google infrastructure, so it controls that. For smaller providers like Foursquare, these both things are the same. So there are some definitions of resource owner. I don't want to bore you with them. I'm going to quickly skip them over. Okay. Now, this is typically the flow which is there, and you will understand the flow when I actually take you to the example. Okay. So the way it works is very simple. There's a client. Okay. Let's say the client is a web application like printfast.com. Me as a user, I go to printfast.com. The first step is to get the authorization request. So there are a couple of keywords which you need to remember. Authorization grant. Authorization grant is when I say, grant access. That is the step. So he goes to who? He's going to the owner. The owner provides the authorization grant. So when the owner provides the authorization grant and I go from printfast.com to Picasa.com and I come back, Picasa will give me a code.
Or is it Google?
Google. See, Picasa is a product of Google, so Google.
No, you had two distinctions there. So, resource server was Picasa and authorization server was Google.
Yes, so think about it. So it's difficult to explain the difference between that. If you go, so for now, assume it's Picasa only. Let's say Google out a picture. We'll go to the flow and then we'll come back to that particular thing. Okay? It's just that you have a server which can do authentication authorization for various other products. That's why you have it separate. Otherwise, let's think about Picasa being in picture every time. So I got a particular code. Okay. Now this is only the code which the user has provided. This code is not good enough for me to go and access the resources. So the user has mentioned that this code means I have provided access to my full name, my date of birth, and posting on my account. Now the client needs to go to the authorization server and exchange this for something called as access token. Okay. And then the third step is, if I'm trying to access my profile, or if I'm trying to post on my behalf, I will simply pass the access token and getting access to the resource. Okay. We'll slowly understand why these two steps are required, why it's not one step. Okay. We'll slowly go to that, but it's meant for better security, because this step happens on the browser. happens behind the scenes. So even if somebody, hacks the authorization code, which is, coming up, this step is more secure, and that's why it's, it happens from server to server. We'll see that example in a moment. Any questions over here? Okay. Is it clear, or you guys are okay?
Is that all about HTTPS?
So yes. OAuth 2.0 says that typically everything is going to be HTTPS, and I'm going to come to that point once I cover one flow of OAuth. So OAuth typically has 4 flows. I'll be talking about them, and once I finish the first flow, I'll go back to OAuth 1 and explain you how things are different than before. So browser flow, printfast.com from backend to picasso.com from backend, get the access code, and once I have the access code, obviously I'm getting all the resources from backend. Backend steps, front-end steps. So before you start to use OAuth, it's a prerequisite. You need to have something registered with the providers. So the applications have to register themselves. Than this application, because if somebody is saying to Google or Facebook that, hey, this is the authorization code, I want to exchange it for access code, you will say, who are you? So for Facebook, it's very easy. You go to developers.facebook.com, there's a button over here called as create new app. This pops up, you enter your name of the application. It is Technics training in this case. Once you do that step, you have actually got one more thing which is called as application URL. So what it means is Facebook should also know where is your application hosted. So for that, you provide a site name. So it could be abc.com/myapp where I'm hosting my application. So what I typically get at the end are 3 things. A client ID, which is a unique identification for the client. A client secret, which the client should not share, it's a password. Okay. And lastly, a redirect URL. 3 things your application needs to have to be functioning with Facebook or Google for using OAuth. That's a step for Facebook. Next is google.com, and it's kind of similar. Maybe you guys cannot read it much, but it's just a step where you go to a particular website and you make these things happen. And I'm choosing a web application, I'm choosing a redirect URL over here, and once everything is done, I'm going to get not 2 but 3 things: the client ID, the client secret, and the redirect URL. So what is the essence of redirect URL? When printfast.com says to Picasa that, hey, get the permissions, Picasa has to know where to come back. So the redirect URL is actually printfast.com for it to come back. That's why you require it. Any questions at this point?
In every case of OAuth, this technology is the same in client ID, client secret, and the URL.
Yes. So yes, that's the same.
According to the specs.
It's according to the specs. So yeah. Any other question?
So when from previous form, when the app says it's in my environment, this is like Salesforce, which is what everyone got Salesforce from. How do you validate that?
No, you need to have one static URL.
Oh, you need to have
One static URL, because otherwise Facebook won't know where to take you back. But the question was for Salesforce, where you have dynamically generated URLs for doing load balancing, you often get different URLs. Okay. So yes.
If you are going to use OAuth, let's say I want to use the Facebook application, access Facebook applications, and simultaneously I want to access it from Picasa.
Yes.
So I have to register on both Picasa and
True. So basically, so the question is, if I want to use Facebook and I want to use Picasa together to create a mashup application, you need to have both the things. You need to have the client register with Facebook, the client register with Picasa, and you will actually have to have both the flows going up. Once you'll be going, so it will be like, okay, initiate the application, step 1, get permissions from Facebook. Step 2, get permissions for Picasa. then you get what is called as an access code, access token. The access token is what you provide to the RESTful web services, and you can access to both the things. That's how it is. We'll see a live example just in a few moments, and to be able to use a live example, we need to use a tool. The tool is called as Postman. So how many of you guys are familiar with Chrome? Use Chrome very easily? Okay. So I'll recommend you use Chrome, and I'll switch over to a browser view so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So if you actually go to Chrome Web Store, search for Postman. It's a RESTful client. Simple as that. What it allows you to do is, it allows you to do put, get, what do you call, all these post requests to resources. And once you have them, you can just install this Postman client on your Chrome, and that way you understand the URL which you're putting, what are the query parameters, what are the header parameters, what's the response, am I sending a application JSON request or application XML request, what all things. So it makes your life easier. So always use this client if you are playing with RESTful web services. Fine. Going back to the presentation. The different ways to do OAuth. So primarily there are 4 ways of doing OAuth, and that is because of the grant types. I'll explain to you what it is. So let's do one thing. Let's go to the first flow of OAuth, then understanding what these things are. Okay. The first flow of the OAuth is the most common flow. We'll go through that flow of OAuth, and then we'll understand what actually happens. Okay. We'll do the same flow on Facebook and Google, and then we'll see what steps we're taking, and then I'll explain you what that actually means and what the other things mean. So far we know this flow. Authorization request on the browser. I get the authorization code. I use the authorization code. I get the access token from the backend. I have the access token from the backend. I'm gonna go and fetch resources, my images, my friend feeds, whatever I want. I can fetch it. But here's the thing with this. Like I said, this access code token has an expiry date. So what if it expires? What do you do? Get it again, but that's a problem. You want to get it again, now you are exposing a risk basically, because what happens is you're going to again go to the browser flow, which is a risky flow. And over there, if somebody tries to capture your username, password, or your authorization code, something like that, we want to avoid that. So once we have done that same flow, we don't want the user to do this flow. One reason is reduce the risk. Everything is happening in the backend. Frontend is nothing happening. Second thing, much better usability experience. I'm not taken back to the same flow again. Imagine this photo print, you give the access once, and it's, after 2 days it again asks for access. And you're like, what's happening? You won't like it. So what do we do over there? That's the question.
It might be up to the user, right? Because let's say today I have given access to so many apps from my Picasa account. Right now, there is no way from Picasa I can identify which all apps I have given that, and I can't revoke them.
You have. We don't know about this, but you have, and that will become more evident. The thing is, we are new to the OAuth concept and how these things work on the web browser. But we are used to the concept on cell phones that I have an application and I want to uninstall the application. The concept is the same. I got an account. I want to remove the permissions. So what you do over here is, over here I got an access token in the first flows. I was using it to get the protected resources. Then suddenly it expired. I got an error. So what happens is, for some OAuth providers, they provide along with the access code a refresh token. So that you get 2 tokens. The access token has lesser life. The refresh token is more like permanent. It's a substitute for your username and password because you don't want the user to go to the same flow again. So over here, use a refresh token to actually get the access token again. And once you see the example, you'll understand why it's secure. I'll talk about the security once we go to the live example. So let's just go to a live Facebook example, okay? And I'll take a pause, we'll go back some slides, ask as many questions as you like after this example, okay? So I'm on my Postman Chrome extension, and I have already recorded some of these, calls. That's what the Postman is good for. You can actually have definitions that this is a call to Facebook, this is a call for doing this. So and this can be downloaded. So there's a link where you can directly import these scripts into your Chrome and play with it. So first thing, authorization grant. So for the authorization grant, we won't be doing anything in Postman. The reason I'm putting this URL in Postman is so that we can see this thing and understand what the URL means. So I'm going to HTTPS, again to answer your question, HTTPS, facebook.com, dialog, OAuth. And then whatever is over here is also mentioned over here. Client ID. What is the application which is trying to do that? Redirect URL. Right now I'm giving it as a local URL and it works, so good. Scope. The scope is the permission. What am I allowing access to? So you can just have space separated things. This is about user about me. User about me means user information and user's friend information. But if I want to jump on my friend and get its information, then I have to add one more parameter to the scope. So I can keep on doing, next permission plus next permission, and these are all documented on Facebook OAuth site. Now the specs, OAuth specs will dictate what is on the left hand side. OAuth specs won't dictate what is on the right hand side. Okay, so scope is a string in Facebook. It's a URL in Google. Then finally, there's something called a state which you're putting in. So because you're doing some activity, okay, and you're jumping to Facebook or Picasa in the middle of the thing, and you're coming back, you have a state. Remember something. So you can just put the state in the URL itself. Okay, go there and come back. Because how many times we have done this thing? Okay, we are going to redirect to some website, come back, and then again redirect to some other website because it's a step involved. So for example, I actually want to send a message to my friend. So I click on something. Okay, it asks me which all do you want to share it with Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. That's the next step. But my original state was that I actually want to send the message. What is the message? You can simply go here. So you don't have to maintain the session information in the backend. So let's do one thing. We'll copy this URL over here. We're going to dump it over here. Hopefully you guys can make some sense out of this. So if you see, right now it did not ask me for anything because I'm already logged in. So let me use my Safari account. Okay, I think let me Anybody knows how to delete cookies from Safari? Okay. Let me try to do that from here itself. Okay, so I'm not seeing a step because I'm already authenticated. That's what is happening. What happens really over here is I'll just show you a screenshot.
Is that because for that user it's already directed?
Yes. So let's just see it over here. That's why I have screenshots with me all the time. So I'll see a screen like this. Okay, go to the application, and I will be actually giving permission. That permission granted, and that's where I'll be getting this URL. But this URL, I'm not very sure if you guys can see that, and I don't know. So let's try to read it out. It's got something called a state over here, if you guys cannot see. First argument is state. Second argument is called as code. This is the authorization code. So I came back to my site and I have this thing on my URL. So what I'm supposed to do is copy this authorization code. It's kind of big. We'll go back to Postman. The next step is Facebook exchange authorization code for access code. Now this step is happening on a backend. Even though I'm doing it on a browser, understand this is happening from server side to server side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this code, I'm going to replace it with my code. So the URL is graph.facebook.com OAuth access token. That's the access token endpoint, where I'm going to exchange my authorization code with access code. Here, remember the arguments are different. I got a client ID, I got a redirect URI, but I also have the client secret. Any idea why I'm putting a client secret over here?
I can fix the original
Yeah, because it's to prove that I'm the client. So it's secure. And this is also happening over HTTPS. Okay. Then I'm putting the code, and then I say send, and I get back my access code. Can you guys see this over here? It's kind of small, but it's access token and expiry. And over here, the expiry value is pretty large, so it will live for longer time because I basically got the access code from the backend. So it's secure way. That's why this thing is, bigger period. Now I'm going to take this access token, and then I'm going to go to the protected resource part of Facebook. So I've got a graph API which says graph.facebook.com/me. So here I can provide the access token two ways. One is using the URI, which is over here. Second thing, which is much more recommended, is actually to put it in a HTTP header. So actually I can put it in a header, and I can say authorization bearer and then my access code. That's another way of doing that, because the reason I recommend another method is because proxies do not cache your HTTP headers. Proxies do cache your URL. But for example, for making it simple, we're going to just try to access, So now look, I just have, this is all stateless. I just have a URI. So URI, I'm just plotting my access code, and I'm getting information about myself. This is what is the essence of OAuth. Right now I'm getting the information. If I need to post my feed or post something to my wall, it will be a post call where I can leave a URI, okay, my access code, and what do you want to print on my wall, and give it. Second example also is very simple. This is just about my friends. If I do that, I get my friend list over here entirely. Okay, so let's just revise. Step number one, I create a URI. Okay, the URI is meant to get the authorization grant. So on my application, I'll put a login button. Once I click on the login button will change the browser URI to something like facebook.com dialog OAuth. What's my client ID? Who am I? What's my redirect URI? Where to come back? Okay, then the state. Okay, and then the scope. So I go to Facebook. Everything happens. Facebook knows that this is the redirect URI. Come back over here with two things: state and the authorization grant. So the web flow is over, browser flow is over. Now the browser, JavaScript client or whatever you say, or the server will actually extract the authorization grant. So the browser thing is over. Now let's step behind on the server side. On the server side, the server has two things. It has the client ID also and the client secret also, and the redirect URI also, because it owns the profile of the client. So now it uses all this information, puts the grant, sends it to the server on the backend, gets the access code. Once you have the access code, I know that for limited time, I can keep on accessing Facebook or Google or some APIs. Any questions over here?
Let's say somehow I got the authorization grant and I haven't asked for the access code. I haven't sent, for whatever reason to send a request for access token. So is, again for this authorization grant also any expiration?
So the question is, if I get the authorization grant but I don't use it, would it expire? The spec doesn't say anything about this. Okay, because the whole point is if you have the authorization grant, maybe it expires. It's better if it expires. But anyway, even if it doesn't expire, I need to have the client secret and the client ID both in order to exchange it for an access token. So it's safe. Even if I put it on the internet, it's still safe because nobody will have the client secret.
Regarding the scope, you said me next. So those are all as part of specs, or it is changes for individual for.
So that's what I said. The left-hand part, which is typically the keys, they are defined by the specs, and mostly the people agree to that. But the values, they are different for Facebook. Yes. So here's an example of Facebook OAuth. So what we are talking about as authorization grant, second name to that is server-side OAuth. Clear? Popular name is server-side OAuth because we got a server involved. Okay, so you should check the API for authentication for websites, and here if you go and there's a thing called as permissions. Why do you need to log in? Here, these are the permissions. User about me, friends about me. That's for your information. So you say /b, it's for yourself in the context of the user. If I say /165693, the ID of the friend, then I need this permission basically. Okay. What activities are on my wall? Friends wall. So that documentation is present over here. Fair enough?
So the authorization token is specific to the user and the client.
Yes. Yes.
So supposing I have the authorization token which has not expired, right?
So there are two things. There's authorization token and there's access token. What are you talking about?
Access token.
Access token, yeah.
Access token is, it's not expired, but some other user starts using the same computer.
So that's the problem which is there with.
Supposing I'm using it at a cyber cafe.
So
someone else comes and occupies and starts using the same app.
Okay, so what you're talking about is a different thing. It's about cookies. Okay, so when you're doing OAuth, what happens is you're talking about how easy is it for me to get the for anybody to get the authorization token. That's because you are left your browser that way. Okay, it's like saying I left my phone that way. Okay, so really OAuth doesn't talk about these things. Something is coming in the OpenID specs for that, which I have not read completely. But yes, this is a problem. If you do not log out from your Facebook, okay, that's a problem which the end user has created, because he has actually kept a session over there. If he hasn't logged out for Facebook, I can simply use Facebook itself to start commenting from that particular thing. So that's not really a problem for OAuth to solve. Getting my point?
Yeah, I get your point, but there are two things here. One is that supposing you allow and the user himself by mistake closes the browser. He opens another browser, then he has to log in again.
See here, because you have cookies, and like you saw that for my site, it never even asked for Facebook. It just went to Facebook and came back in a jiffy. You never saw it.
If you close the browser and try it again,
it would not. It would be the same.
right?
No, it will be the same. There will be no like. I won't need to put in my login name or no, you won't, because it's based on cookies. First thing is based on cookies, and because how do I tell you?
No, for example, if you take LinkedIn and you ask other friends in your Gmail, right? So one time you gives your Gmail username and password, and you sign out.
What do you mean by cookies?
No. I'm talking about the background, what they keep the app ID and the access token.
Right.
So the LinkedIn is keeping the access token in the background, not in the browser.
Exactly. So yeah, that's a correct answer. So I got your context now. That's very, thanks for helping me out. So what he is saying is the access token is on the server.
Right.
And if I log in from my account, I will use that access token. If somebody else logs in from his account, he will use other access token. So access token is user specific and that's basically kept to the server. That's why this flow is more secure. Fair enough? So there's another flow for Google, it's similar. So instead of doing it live, to save time, I'll just walk you through some screenshots. Is it okay? Or let me just, it's okay. Just do it over here, not an issue. So let's go to Google authorization grant. Now in this case, there are a couple of more parameters which you will see. They are part of the specs, but Facebook by default assumes that. That's why you don't have to mention in Facebook. Okay. So you got client ID, redirect URI, scope. Look, the client ID over here is some weird big text with some .com. Okay. The scope is also a URI because they want to keep it unique. The stage is again the same. Access type offline, I have to mention it so I can show you the refresh token flow. Facebook doesn't have refresh tokens. So again, Facebook is not completely adhering to. Anyway, the spec says it's optional. So, that's okay. So here we'll look at a refresh token also. And lastly, the response type is code. So in Facebook also, you can pass the parameter called as response type. So when you pass the parameter response type, you're saying that I want the authorization code. So code is short form for authorization code and token is short form for access token, which we'll see later on. So I'm just going to put this thing over here and hopefully I get a screen. Okay, good. I get something over here. I'll sign up, allow access, and I get the authorization code. Now go back to my Postman script. I will exchange. Now in case of Google, I need to do a post request instead of a get request. So I'll just put my code over here. Client ID, client secret, everything. Grant type is what that I'm require authorization code. And if I do this, I'll get all these things. I'll get an access token. Token type is bearer, and I get a refresh token also. There's something called as ID token also. This is part of OpenID Connect, which I'll talk at the end. So right now only worry about the access token and the refresh token, right? So just to prove this works, we'll take this access token. This is happening at the backend. We'll go to the protected resources and we'll put it over here. It's OAuth 2 v1 UserInfo access token, and I get information about myself. Next thing what we'll do is we will I needed to save the, okay, we'll have to do this one more time because I need to save the refresh token. I didn't save the refresh token. So one more time, the whole flow, the front end flow from the browser, exchange it. Okay, I'm not getting it, but that's because it's already being used. But what happens is once you have the refresh token, you do something like this. OAuth 2 token. This is the endpoint to get the access token. You are giving the refresh token now, not the authorization token, authorization code. And you are again giving the client ID and the client secret. And the grant type is, I'm using the refresh token instead of something else. So once you do that, you get the same thing. Right now it will work because my refresh token is long term. So I again get my access token renewed. And this is the expiry date of my time of my access token. So this is the second flow in which we are talking about refresh token. So you should store your expiry time also. So it should be proactive and not reactive. Okay, just keep that in mind. So I'll just stop over here, pause over here. I'll put some slide on over here, and we'll go and look, answer a few of your questions. This is one slide, so any questions? Or this is clear? No questions? So do you understood it completely, or okay? I'll assume you understood it completely. So that's called as the authorization grant flow, because the first step is to get the authorization grant. Now, how many of you guys are aware that Facebook gives an API where you don't require any server? You can just do everything in JavaScript. So JavaScript is becoming more and more popular. We want just to sprinkle our web servers with JavaScript and do things from there.
Graph API.
Graph API. So this is also Graph API, but these are server side, RESTful Graph APIs. Those are client side JavaScript Graph API libraries. Okay. So what I typically want to do is, if I'm not a power user, all I want to do is I want somebody to comment from my. So you're going to sites, okay, where you go to sites and there's a comment box. It already knows that you are Facebook. Or let's say you're putting some information and you want to post it on Facebook wall. There are many such sites, and obviously all the social media sites, they want an easier way of doing this, because all the site people, PHP developers or JavaScript developers, they are not power users. They are not power developers, sorry. So for them it's very difficult. Okay. So so that's why JavaScript API came into the picture. That's why we'll go to the next thing, called as implicit grant. But before that, I promised you that I'll tell you the difference between OAuth 2 and OAuth 1. Okay. So now you found it very easy to do OAuth 2 with this thing. In OAuth 1, the problem was, whenever you're doing anything in the background, when you're sending the client ID and client secret and everything, you have to give two more parameters. One is called as the signature type. That either I'm using SHA or cryptography, which cryptography method you are using, and second thing is called as a signature, where you take all these parameters and you encode them with your client secret and you provide a signature. And that was a big problem. So LinkedIn and Twitter, they are actually an OAuth 1. So if you're going to use them, you'll have to use some cryptography library to pass two more parameters. Now, how many of you guys over here actually understand cryptography very well? Okay, good. Few of them. But for others, first of all, I said the word HSA. We have no clue what that means. Okay, in cryptography, what do you call it? We don't even know the category of cryptography. What is involved? So that was very discouraging for people. So what I said was, since everything is going to happen on HTTPS, what's the requirement for this additional cryptography step? That's where the concept of bearer token came into picture, where the token itself is valid. You don't have to decrypt a code token for validity. Okay, and that's what caused many ripples in the OAuth community. In fact, because of this decision and trying to get OpenID Connect into the OAuth specs, the main editor of OAuth resigned. There's a lot of controversy around it, which I'll talk later on. That's a major difference between. So this flow, okay, with the cryptography is OAuth 1. Okay, rest all the flows which you're gonna see, they are actually part of OAuth 2. Any questions? So okay.
You mean to say that in OAuth 1, this two-step process was not there, only one process?
No, everything was there, but you need to, in the second step, you need to send the signatures.
Why?
Because that was in the year 2007, and many of the websites, some of the websites did not choose to do it on HTTPS. So if you're doing on HTTP and you can read all these things, how do you make sure that the request is coming from this particular person? That's why. So let's go to which this one? Sure. Okay, thank you. So let us go to the implicit grant. For JavaScript APIs, you cannot afford to be at the server side. Everything has to happen on the client side. Second option. The option goes very simple. I get the authorization request and I get the access token directly. And then I can do whatever I want the access token. Typically in this case, they recommend that the access token has to be short-lived. So you will have to keep on logging again if the access token expires. problems are very, very specific, generic. It's very easy to leak out access token in this case. Okay, although it's HTTPS, if you have a bad user agent, things can go vary. Although this happens on HTTPS, so anybody sniffing on a wire, they cannot understand what was the access token given to you. But anyway, directly getting the access token from a browser is anyway bad stuff. So this is an example of implicit grant, which is called as client-side OAuth. First, authorization grant, server-side OAuth, implicit grant, because implicitly you are getting the access code. Client-side OAuth is what it's called. So very simple example. We just see one example. We'll skip the Google example. So here I have one thing changed. This is the response type over here. It's become token. Earlier the response type was not there, so it was defaulting to code. Code equal to authorization code, token is equal to access token. So I'm going to take this. It comes back, I get my access token directly over here. Okay. At the end, I'll get my expiry. So the expiry over here is 5118. If you can remember the expiry in the earlier case, that was not a 4-digit number, but a 6 to 8-digit number. Short-lived access thing. Just to prove my point, this works. We'll do a single example, and then we'll be done for the thing. So we are going to directly replace this over here and do things, and I get my things over here. So if I have JSON-P APIs or some other APIs, how many of you guys know JSON-P over here? Okay, I won't go into that. But let's say, since the JavaScript gets the access token, the JavaScript can itself do things on a server. There's some ways of doing that. So that's why you get Facebook Connect. I think that's what the library is called, JavaScript library is called, which you can use to do all these things. Okay. So that's the second way of. So it's 5 o'clock. Do you guys want a break and then come back and we'll cover the other topics? Okay. So let's just start again. So anybody who wants to try these examples again, okay. They can use the Postman scripts over here, which I have. Obviously, I'll be deleting my applications, so none of the client ID and client secret will work anymore for you. So you have to get your own client ID and client secrets. The way to use this is you just take this URL, go to Postman, and say import those things, and that's it. You have all those things imported in your Chrome, and you can try it as example. Fair enough. So those scripts are already put in over here. Next things is there are 2 more grant types. Resource owner password credentials grant. The name is very big. Think about it as username password grant. So the idea is very simple over here. Many times what will happen is you will have a restricted environment where you won't have access to the browser. Okay? And you will still require to log in the user and get permission from the user to use resources on his behalf. So for such things, you will simply ask the user for username and password. That's a provision in OAuth. Okay. So the idea is very simple. We'll see why it's important, when it will be important. The idea over here is the resource owner simply passes the username and password to the client. The client is not supposed to store this. Okay. That will again seem like the first example. We swear not to expose the thing. I'll come to that in a moment. Now the client will do one thing. The client has its own client ID and client secret. It will add the username and password of the resource owner, go to the server, get an access token, optionally also refresh token if that's allowed. And then the story is the same. So an example of a company who does that is Salesforce. So think about this. Now I'll take some examples. These are not live examples. These are just examples I'm making up on a air. Okay. Think about Mac users, OS X users. Mac has a much more deeper integration with Twitter or Facebook now. If Mac asks you for username and password of Twitter, okay, you wouldn't mind doing that because you trust Apple with that. That's the scenario which I'm saying. It's not the case, Okay, I'll just give you an example. Similarly, if Salesforce gives a fat client to access Salesforce, you can trust Salesforce, with giving the password. Similarly, if Google gives me a application to access Gmail, then again I would trust that basically. So the basic requirement here is the strong trust between the resource owner and the client. So the provision is there. It's not like you're doing something totally evil over here. It's done with the thought process. And one of the things which spec says is you are not allowed to store the username and password. What you can store is the access token and the refresh token if you want to refresh the access token. That is the idea. So beyond this, I won't be talking anything in this case because I've not seen any examples which are really coming up, and this is just to cover the specs. Simply as that. So same thing I've written over here. The next grant type is kind of special. It's called as client credentials grant. Now, think about this. You have to be wary about a couple of things, that what you are accessing as resources, who owns it. For the first thing, authorization grant and the client side grant, you are sure that the resources are your own resources which you're trying to access. But the client application can access resources which are not yours. For example, think about this. Google Drive or Dropbox or Skype the client side application has a page, has a screen which talks about the SLA compliance. Uptime, downtime, video quality and everything. These are not your resources. These are, client's resources itself. So what client will do is, client will say, I'll give my client credentials and give me access token. And then the resources will be used directly. So that's one example of client credentials grant. Any questions on this? I'm coming to specs, so I'm covering everything. Maybe there's no live example for this. But the second thing in client credentials is provision that, let's say, how many of you guys have used something like Microsoft Exchange or Google Apps and things like that? Anybody? SharePoint or something like that. So many times when you are working in a company, you don't own the resources. The resources are owned by the company. It's the organization who owns it. For example, there's a company calendar. Something like that, okay? So the company owns the calendar, not you. So if you guys know Google Apps, I'll just tell you a bit about Google Apps. Google Apps is a platform by Google where you get Gmail, calendar, sites, groups, all these things for your company employees. So we have it. So I have rohit.khatwal@synergy.com as my Google ID, and I have Gmail and everything. Now on top of that Google Apps platform, we can install other applications. For example, HR application or a recruitment application. Now what happens over there is the Google Apps admin will give a full grant to that application beforehand. So for example, recruitment application, that needs to have access to my calendar. Not only my calendar, the entire organization calendar. Think about this. With OAuth, what can you do? With OAuth, with your own resources, you can do very limited things. Your accounts, your calendar, your own things. But think about an entire flow where a candidate sends a resume, it gets screened, the HR is scheduling a call with B, so it's sending me a calendar request, booking a room, then there's a whole flow, then it goes to some other calendar, going on and going on. In that case, I require access to not my calendar, but many people's calendar. So if there is already a set contract between the application and the organization's admin, then there's no requirement for any authentication. So authorization. The authorization is already given. That is again that's again a provision in client credential grant. Because the client has been issued the credentials beforehand. There is no need for the authorization grant. That's what this thing is all about. Okay. So the flow looks like simply as this. Client credentials are given. You get the access token and optional refresh token. So this is for more of much more bigger flow. That's what I was talking about. So these two flows are not so important. The most important flows are the first two flows: authorization grant website, server side, and then implicit ground client side. Next is, this is an important topic, this is called OAuth on mobile phones. Okay, so there are many approaches of doing OAuth on mobile phones, and people do OAuth on mobile phones because the problem is same, and plus it makes sense because I want to access, I want to put something on Facebook or doing something. So basically, how many of you guys have used this application called as Instagram? Anybody? Oh, quite a few people. You can post on Facebook, right? Because you do OAuth with Facebook, you get permission. So all the photographs can go on Facebook. So there are many approaches. We'll look at only popular approaches. Okay. One is when I'm using the user agent, stock browser. Flow goes like this. I have the app either on my Android phone or on my iPhone. There's a button on that. Log in with Facebook. Either that or upload a photo to Facebook. Something where I'm getting some permission from Facebook. I click on that. I come over here. My Safari browser opens up or my Chrome browser opens up. The rest of the flow is simply same. No issues. But there are some issues with that because this is a native application. This is a browser. I can open this. How can I redirect from this to the application? Because the problem. So we'll be talking about that. Okay. So we'll be going a little bit deep. How many of you guys actually coded Android or iPhone over here? There are quite, I think 20-30% audiences there. So I'll give some code examples and tell you some ways of doing that. Okay. This is the first approach. So disclaimer, the next couple of slides, they're not my slides. I simply copied them over from this gentleman's slide to make things easier. So I'm just putting this as a disclaimer so he doesn't come and sue me. So the flow is very simple. This is a native application. Can you guys see it actually? Or is it very faint? Very faint? Let me read it out to you. Let me explain the whole thing to you. So this is meant so that you can also take a look at it later on. The slide is already uploaded. It's there on TechNext. Okay, you can take a look. The idea here is very simple. I require a URL for redirection and coming back. Either, so we know how to construct a URL. Client ID, scope, permission, and redirect URL is what we give. So we create a particular URL. Then we either use the Android code, which is intents, to fire up the browser, or we use iPhone code for people who know iPhone programming to again fire up the browser. So the native application is over here. I click on a button, it goes away, browser comes in. Right? Next step. Very, very simple. I'll be taking to the authorization endpoint. I give permission. And it will redirect. And that's where the catch is. If I redirect to a server-side thing, there's no use of my application. The catch there is, can you guys see this? Or I can just zoom in more. Better? Than before? So look at that URL. That's my redirection URL. Have you ever seen a URL like that? It says x-com my app. I can even say xyz:// That's a schema, right? HTTP is a schema. HTTPS is a schema. File is a schema. Samba SMP is a schema. So what I'm saying over here is, let me introduce a new schema. Because the way things work in Android phone or iPhone also is, there are applications which are registered for a schema. So in the first place, in Android, when I say, hey, who will open http://google.com, the browser will say I can, because I'm responsible for that schema. I'm registered for the schema. Same thing happens in iPhone. So browsers are responsible for those schemas. What we do is we introduce a new schema and we register an application to actually respond to this new schema. So now the next step is So the next step is that we are actually going to register that hey, this schema needs to be handled by one of my classes in my program. So when the browser redirects, Android says, browser is not meant for you, it's meant for this application. The whole flow, browser goes behind, application comes in front of it. And then I use my code to get a parameter. Simple as that. I can use both the flows. I can use the server-side flow, I can use the client-side flow, whatever I want, because I can exchange those things. Similarly in iOS, there's a file called pages file, which is part of the configuration. I register a custom schema over there, and similar code. So people who know iOS can look it up. I'm not an expert in iOS. I know Android a bit. That's the whole thing. Next is again the same thing. You have this thing. You exchange your authorization code for an access code, and then you finally get access to the resource. Fair enough. So because of custom schemas, browser and applications can switch between themselves. Any questions on this? I have an open source project called as Droid Tweet on code.google.com. You can look at the source code. The entire source code for Android is there, where we actually have an activity which comes in response to custom URL. And the best part is for Facebook and for Twitter also, and for other things, we were able to give this custom schema. They didn't complain. Some OAuth providers do complain that what kind of schema is this? Then you are gone. As long as they support this schema, then it's okay. So many providers have different conditions. For some provider, I can say HTTP some schema, and then at runtime I can use some other schema also, some other redirect URL also. That works. But you have to go case by case. Typically, I have seen this thing works for most of the major providers. So what is the pros of this thing? Advantage. Maybe I'm already logged in because the browser. Because from somewhere else I must have done that thing. So I'm already logged in. So the flow is as good as on the browser. Because I see HTTPS, because I see the domain name, I am satisfied. Nothing creepy is happening. Because on maximum mobile phones, you have the login screen. Give me the whole IDs. Cons, it's complicated to code this thing. Okay, that's the cons of this. The second approach, embedded web view. This started coming up and I've seen them more on iPhone applications, more or less. Here, the flow goes like this. Let me explain to you the concept of web view. How many of you guys know what a web view is? Okay. You know browser. What if the browser component is available as a view class? You put it there and you say view.set URL XYZ. So let's say that component is available in Java or Android or iOS. Then you can have inside your application an embedded browser. This is that embedded browser. Okay? That's what we're talking about, using WebView. Now what happens is once you put a WebView, it has many APIs. You can set listeners, if the URL is changing, call me a callback. Many such things you can do. You can also have trigger points. You can make a JavaScript call in native code. A lot of things can be done. But we'll just focus on if the URL, which is not shown over here, because this is an embedded WebView, there's no need to show the address bar. That changes, and the callback is called. So in this case, if I go from over in the application, the WebView comes into picture, okay, and the redirection happens. My code can catch it, and then extract the code very easily. What are the pros of this is it's very easy to monitor and abstract it basically. It integrates very well with the application also. The cons is it may not appeal because I don't know whether what's that really. If I create some other weird thing and somebody can get my username password, I won't be satisfied because I don't have HTTPS, I don't have domain name. And WebView has a separate history and cookies. So again, I don't have an advantage of using the cookies for pre-logging in, and that's the thing over here. So that's about the mobile flow. I'll just pause for a moment and let's just ask questions on OAuth. There are a couple of more slides I have on OpenID. I'm a bit wary of going the OpenID way because I understand OpenID, but OpenID Connect is a beast. We can talk about it, but you just let's just have some QA round on Q&A round on OAuth. If you have any questions, then we'll worry about whether you want to go to OpenID or not. Yeah.
Suppose we have grant access to some applications.
Yes.
Later day we want to revoke the access. It will notify to the application owner that this user has revoked the permission.
No. The question is, if a client application gets an access code and the user goes to the Facebook or this thing, Twitter, and revokes the thing, the application won't get any notification. Next time the application tries to, or a client tries to do a OAuth call and pass the OAuth, it will get the error code. Maybe the error code may have this thing, so it's not proactive, it's always reactive. Next time the application tries to access the resource, because the access code is revoked, they'll get an error. In the error, it may be stated by its remote, it may be a simple statement that you don't have access.
And you are way to suppose we have facing this issue. Actually, we have implemented in Salesforce OAuth access, but we haven't whether user have revoked the application.
So I've gone to the entire OAuth specs, okay, the whole PDF. No provision for that. It's out of the scope for that.
Can you say this? OAuth as a open source access? Can we utilize it like this?
Can you help me over there? He's talking about open source SSO. Do you know anything about it?
I mean,
So he's asking about is OAuth like open
some,
SSO.
we have site manager and stuff like that.
See that I think comes in. See, I have read about SAS a bit. I read about SAML. I don't understand SAML much. I understand SAS very little. That's what I understand about SSO. So in those cases, what you really have is, see, in those cases, okay, let me talk about SSO and let me talk about OAuth world. OAuth is decentralized. There is no central authority. SSO is centralized. You have a central provider. All the application will always go to you. So the idea in SAML or SAS is, like for example, in your enterprise world, you log into one application, you go to some other application, there also you are logged in. Because you are issued a token. Token is issued by the central authority and the same token is being used by all the applications. Okay, so whenever you try to use that, it always goes to the central authority to do this. That is a centralized way of doing that. Okay, that's SSO. Here, there's no centralized word. So that's how I'll compare it basically. Here it's one-to-one.
Because here we are just talking about what is the authorization here.
No, there's no talk about identity at all. We're not talking about identity. Identity is implicit. Because you're able to provide the grant, you're able to provide the valid key, that means you are the owner of the car. No, you're not showing your car papers. You're just giving the valid key. That's how you are the owner in this case.
Can OAuth be integrated with LDAP authentication? I mean, you said Facebook, Twitter, etc. These are the OAuth ID. You must have implemented some code to do this code to return the. So by tomorrow, I want my LDAP servers to be OAuth-ified. So you have to make it web-based or something.
No, so the question which you ask, we'll go into why you're asking it. Okay, because you think that OAuth is a silver bullet to everything. That's what you think. That's not the case. Again, OAuth is delegated authorization. That doesn't mean it replaces the world of identity management. All these servers which you have, Net Finder, Site Finder, and then all these other things, they have their SaaS, open source SaaS, or all these things. They have their purpose there. Because what you're talking about is user identity, talking about having authorization or permissions or roles on a central server. So everything you do on a central server, and then you have different applications, and you will keep on adding applications. So now the admin only has to control on the central server. Otherwise, imagine if let's say you have a company, you have 3 applications running, you take over another company, that comes into picture. 2 more applications, different identities. Then you say you can log in this with this, log in this with some other ID. You solve the problem by having a common LDAP server. That's it. Problem solved. But what about the permissions or roles? So again, you have to have a centralized identity manager, centralized authorization manager, that's the other world. So in this case, OAuth really doesn't solve that problem.
No, I mean, generally you use an LDAP server only to validate the login, user ID, password. So one part of this whole process, I can use it over there. Instead of writing code to go and do it always, just go on. Suppose I have 4 different LDAP servers configured in my box. I don't want to write code which will be doing it alone. So I just direct, like sign in with your Facebook account, sign in with LDAP account.
Sure.
Once I get the validity, I can keep the rules in my own software.
No, nothing stops you from doing that. That's that. You can do it that way basically.
Do I have to add, like, Facebook is enabled with OAuth? So there was some
You have to write a server. So you understand the specs. You understand how the flow goes. We also know what the server sends. We know what the client sends. If you write a web server which does all these things,
Write a RESTful service kind of.
that's allowed. But the problem with LDAP is, okay, you can say login with LDAP. So you are giving access to your identity. So there will be a RESTful web service which says who are you, and you get a JSON back or XML back saying this is what you are. So you need to have that web service also
In the LDAP.
in the LDAP server. So about OpenID Connect, I'm a bit wary of taking it. How many of you guys have patience to look at OpenID and OpenID Connect over here? Okay. So the thing is, the chances are if I go to OpenID, okay, you might get confused about why these two things exist, and I don't have very good answers for all of those. Okay. So anybody who wants to take off right now is more than welcome to take out. Anybody who's interested in staying for OpenID Connect, please stay with me, and we can take it ahead. Okay. So I'm going to start with OpenID. I won't mind if somebody takes off right now. Okay. So we're talking about OAuth. Looks very fantastic. But there's something called as OpenID. How many of you guys have seen OpenID? Okay, used OpenID. So let me take an example of OpenID. So here I'll be very, very conceptual, okay? I won't go into depth of the protocols and everything. It's a vast specification. So, Sasha's live journal is some place where there's a live journal by a girl called Sasha, and she's writing about the battle of patents between mobile phone manufacturer evades my common sense. Certain things seems valid, but patents are on common sense should be rethought of. And I want to comment. Can't agree more with you. My guess is patents were introduced to save real scientific intellectual properties and not rounded corners. I didn't say that, but I can always say that. So here, instead of having a button, I am putting in a URI. On the internet, URIs are unique. So in OpenID world, the concept is, and this is OpenID 1.1 and OpenID 2.0. This is like 5-6 years back. These are no longer very popular. Okay, they are being replaced by another specification called as OpenID Connect, which I'll be talking about. But some background is required. So we are going 5-6 years behind when OAuth wasn't there. So I put this URI, and I have to always remember this URI because this is my ID, not Rohit Ghatol, but this. So I'm taken to OpenID, and it says my OpenID. You are signing into livegeneral.com as this, and I say continue. And I come back, and this guy knows that yes, I am the owner of this URI. That is what OpenID is. My ID is a URI, and I am proving it that I own the URI. Nothing more than that. Again, why this came to picture? To solve the problem that I don't want to have different logins, different passwords for different sites. So many people provided OpenID, and many people claim that OpenID is very, very popular, and all these people were geeks. Not common people. I would see a person would be crazy to use a URI as an ID. Okay? So people talk, there was a lot of talks on this, a lot of things happen, people saying there's 50 million accounts and all these things. I don't know how they were saying this, but this is what OpenID is all about. How many of you guys would like to use applications this way? Wait, you have to type in again your things. So we're talking about not typing in. This is 5 years back. What used to happen? So what are you doing? I'm proving that I'm this guy. Simple as that. And there's a flow which happens. There's a browser side flow. There's a backend side flow. The flow is, has some commonality between OAuth. Next example. Same thing. But in this case, I mentioned OpenID.com. So I'm a bigger geek and I want to use my own URL. Okay. Not like rohitgatal@facebook.com, but Facebook@rohitgatal.com. It's like being Rajnikant. And that's even crazy because if I use this, how would this guy know that I'm having my identity on my OpenID? Because I'm only using a custom URL. That's it. So let's see what happens behind the scene. So what happens behind the scene is when I say rohit.rohit@myopenid.com, okay, or openid.rohitgatal.com, whatever, in my header, I'll zoom this in so you guys can see. This is my OpenID, okay. So actually the URI has a HTML endpoint. Inspect. Can you see something over here? OpenID server, OpenID provider. So this OpenID server I think is from OpenID 1.2 specification, and this is from the second specification. So here I am just saying ki, okay, who is the main provider? This is called as discoverability. Because people wanted to say, so right now when you say OAuth, all of us talk about Facebook, Twitter, Foursquare, LinkedIn, something like this. We never talk about that we will be hosting our own services and we allow people to do OAuth. At that time, the thought process was, what if I want people to log in through my ID basically? So when I enter this URL at livejournal.com, we'll go and pass this particular page, look at this URL, take it, and then communicate with the URL, okay, to exchange some temporary keys, and then redirect the URL, redirect the browser to that particular URL, and then the person will prove he, come back. When he comes back, again some token is passed. And if I have actually done the temporary keys beforehand, then I can decrypt the token and say, okay, he is he. So there's a whole flow involved over here. Now, I don't want to confuse you further, but let's just go back to the presentation. And is the flow making sense? Isn't it similar to what threads do? Boy, you can't even see that. Not too bad, it can't be done. So let me just repeat it this way. Step 1, in OpenID, URI, go there, extract the OpenID provider. Whether it's your URI or somebody else's URI, 1. Step 2, which is optional, is try to communicate with them to get some keys. This step is optional. Third, redirect, let him prove, come back, have a token. If I had taken the keys in step 2, I'll decrypt it. So I know who he is. If I have not taken the keys in step 2, then I will go to the server from behind and say, okay, I've got this token, is this proper? Is what this thing is all about. So again, this is more or less like OAuth, okay, derived. So actually OAuth I think derived its functionality from this. So main difference between OpenID and OAuth. OpenID only tells you one thing, who you are. OAuth gives you a valid key. Because it gives you a valid key, you trust him that, okay, he is the owner. Delegated authentication, delegated authorization. Any questions so far? Okay. Next steps. So OpenID 1 came into picture, 1.1 came into picture, 2.0 came into picture. In 2.0, I won't go there, nothing much changed. And then what happens is people realize that that OpenID needs some more things, and OAuth is getting more popular. So what they do is, they really did this, I don't know if it can be this one either, but OpenID is a suite of, I'll just define OpenID for you guys and explain my own understanding. OpenID Connect is a suite of lightweight specifications that provide a framework for identity interaction via RESTful APIs. So far, it wasn't RESTful, it was redirections. Nothing much was there. And OpenID was not thought to be working on browsers. It was only supposed to work on browsers, not on mobile phones, not on internet specifications. So quite simply what it did is, they said we'll create a new specification, OpenID Connect, which will write on top of OAuth. And that's why it's very important to understand why OAuth and then why OpenID Connect. So simply said, let me give you an example. It will be easy for me to explain things by example. So okay, why OpenID Connect came into picture? Because both OpenID and OAuth rely on the redirection and allowing clients to grant permission. This is the basic thing which is common. Protocol flow is similar, redirection with verification and passing permission to gain authentication, which is what's your username or who you are or getting your ID is similar to passing permission to gain authority to some APIs. So a lot of things are common. So let's just see a dummy flow and we'll see how OpenID Connect sits on top of OAuth. So what happens is we know about two endpoints, authorization endpoint and token endpoint. This is OAuth. With OpenID Connect, we talk about a couple of more endpoints and couple of more tokens. And that is what is the beginning of OpenID Connect. So here, I will can you guys read this? This is a dummy URL because I don't have a, only Google supports OpenID Connect to a degree, there's nobody who supports it. So I got a OAuth URL, I got a scope. The scope, I'm talking about more scope. I want an OpenID scope because I want to actually verify that the user is him. With OAuth, I'm just giving the valid key. I'm not verifying whether the user is himself. And then his email address. I'm giving a nonce, which is a unique key, so that I cannot do replay attacks. Every time this will be unique. Then there's a redirect URL, like before. There's a response type. I'm talking about one more token, ID token. This is OpenID. If you remember the Google response, we saw access code, we saw ID token, we saw refresh token. So ID token and token. Client ID is same, everything is same. No much difference in this case. The same thing explained over here. Okay, so this is the response. So the response, access token, ID token. Now the important thing about ID token is, it's not any dummy value. It's actually an encrypted message. If you can decrypt it, then you will have access to the client's information. Okay, it's called as a JWT. JSON Web Token, which is again a specification which is coming up. I won't go detail into this, but this is encrypted. So there are two ways after this step. One thing is either you are able to decrypt it, so you save a call to the server, you're able to do everything over here. Otherwise, if you don't know how to decrypt it, there is step number 2. Verify the identity by going to check ID endpoint. Special endpoint for OpenID Connect. Go there, and I'm just going to give the ID token. Earlier we gave the access token. This endpoint only takes the ID token, and I get this thing. This is my response. So what I'm doing, I'm just verifying that the user is user. That's part of our OpenID specification. Because if I'm just getting somebody else's access token, quite possible, right? So I don't have the security in place. We're talking about more about authorization, but what about authentication, validity? So let's just look at this response type mean. User ID. It's the user ID of the unique ID of the person. Auth. Auth is nothing but the audience. So if there's a replay attack, I would know that it's not meant for me. So auth is nothing but client ID. For example, I am a developer and I have a client written, and if somebody passes me some other information, I know it wasn't meant for me, but somebody is playing tricks to fool me. Expiry, simple. Nouns, the same thing which I send over there. Otherwise, if there is a replay attack, I know that I won't be using the same thing again and again. And the last thing of OpenID Connect, this is a small spec. OpenID Connect has 7 to 8 specs. This is only one of them. The next step is check ID and UserInfo EndPoint. So you have verified that the authentication is fine. Next step, who are you, boss? Tell me more about you. So in this case, it's the same example of same example over here. Google protected resources. So here, although I'm treating it like any other protected URL, this is a specific URL from OpenID Connect, where if I give the access code, I get the user information. So that's part of the spec. So OAuth we understood, server-side OAuth, client-side OAuth, 2 more specification, mobile thing, everything works fine. OpenID Connect is only 1 spec out of 7 specs. Very simple. How do I verify you are you? I get ID token, I go to check ID, I verify you are you, story ends. Second thing is more information about you. So this thing about OpenID Connect is already present with most of the OAuth providers. Facebook also provides it, facebook.com/me. Okay, over here also you have a user info. So that's a brief about OpenID Connect. I won't go into much more deep into that. It's a vast protocol, nobody is implementing it. We just wanted to give you an idea of, you're talking about OAuth, authorization, what about authentication? This is what comes into picture. Okay, so those are the last slides from my side. And that's it from my side, and these are some of the references. If you want to refer to a good book, which I almost covered in this 2 hours, is this one. This is from a Google developer called as Ryan, who has been talking about OAuth for the last 2 years on Google I/O. And these are the Facebook documentation and Google documentation for the same thing. The same presentation is available on a site over here. So you can go and read up, and you can also try the examples. So that's all from my side. Any questions you have, you can ask. Otherwise, I'm done from my side. So I'm done from my side, and feel free to interact with me. Just one note before we end this. The text is always looking for most.